Bada bum, bada bum, bada 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 bum, bada bum, bada 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 bum, bada bum, bada 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 bum, bada bum bum, bada bum, bada bum, bada 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 bum, bada bum, bada 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 bum, bada bum, bada 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 bum, bada bum bum, bada bum, bada bum, bada 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 bum, bada bum, bada 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 bum, bada bum, bada 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 bum, bada bum bum.
Hey guys, welcome back to the Marvel What Now podcast. This is episode 2, the sequel.
We did it.
We're finally establishing a pattern. We did the one. I thought it'd be one and done, but
we're not going to suffer from sophomore slump. We are here. Hopefully, procrastinators unite.
We were merely freshmen, and now we're back. This is episode 2, where we're breaking down episode 3 of Wandavision, and
that's not confusing.
I know, not confusing at all.
Which the show is kind of confusing, so maybe we're purposely trying to confuse the audience. I don't know.
It fits. It just all works together. So yeah, episode 3. Today we're going to be talking about breaking it down, Easter eggs, things we noticed, talking about performances, just everything all encompassing that we noticed in this episode. Mm-hmm. And just, I mean, the first 2 were amazing, and again, they delivered on another great, completely different episode.
Absolutely, completely agree. It just keeps on going. That the mystery's getting peeled back. Everything's cracking, if you will. Like literally, the walls are cracking. So it's I think this was like kind of the beginning of the turning point. We really saw a lot of things here that I really feel are okay. Here we go now. Like they set up the perfect little world, and now everything's not so good.
I mean, the first 2
funny. They're really funny. Real. There was such a playful sense to it, but those bigger parts with like those dread, when there was like the real cracks that you would see. This episode really had that a big turning point, but we will get to that.
Yeah, really starting to introduce some of those just like eerie kind of like Black Mirror simulation, uncanny valley. Mm-hmm. Just so many moments in this episode where you watch it and you kind of just like cringe, or you're like, oh, I don't know what's happening. And so
scary,
answering more questions while setting up more
mm-hmm.
mysteries and stuff. But again, just another episode, or amazing episode.
All right, let's talk about some of the things that happen here. Let's get into some of the things that happen.
Well, Wanda kicks Jan Brady's ass.
Vision. Yeah, definitely a real Brady Bunch feel. I mean, they really are nailing the kind of tone of the shows as it shifts into these kind of different decades and eras. I still believe that the shows are connected back to like her Sokovian childhood. I think that why she's seeing these shows is she probably watched them just like us. I mean, Elizabeth Olsen is our age, so she probably watched Nick at Night just like we did as well. So these things are just in the back of her head of like this perfect idealized life, especially coming from Sokovia as well. So,
or maybe in Sokovia, it's like, oh, they had just gotten
this new hot show.
They're like, oh, damn it, we just got Dick Van Dyke, and now the town's a meteor.
People are like, what? Typical Game of Thrones? What are you talking about? I don't what is this?
I love that they're not just taking inspiration from one episode. I would say Brady Bunch was probably the biggest like standout, mm-hmm. In terms of architecture, mm-hmm. and
the house really looked like the set, yeah. Mm-hmm. But the music,
the intro was very like Partridge Family.
That's exactly what Ashton said. That's exactly what he said. I agree.
So yeah, I love that it's just not one thing. Like these different eras, it's just collectively how can they, borrow from the aesthetics, mm-hmm. and even the mm-hmm. language. Like we can get into this a little bit more, but just the sexism within the characters,
mm-hmm.
like
which Wanda, is like, bitch, please. Excuse me. What did you just say to me?
I know. I'm so glad they called that out.
Mm-hmm. And like the really kind of corny jokes, when Vision's like, mm-hmm. papaya, and those like really like, oh my god, like literally groan-inducing like laugh track jokes. Like those kind of jokes are written for laugh tracks.
I know, but it's so contextual now with hearing that joke now, and we can sort of like poke fun at it or like, oh my God, that was so,
I think
70s at the time, but yet, like that's what they said in the 70s.
Absolutely.
And now we can, like, it just makes us cringe. But
Wanda's reaction really kind of is our reaction to it. I mean, it is kind of, I think they purposely put that moment in, and especially from her, because this is like her reality. When she sees these things, she's like, "Excuse me, what?" Those things. So like the tropes are there from the world, but even then, it's still like, "Oh no, 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 no."
God, it just works so well. And so in this episode, we definitely, the vast majority of it deals with Wanda and her pregnancy, and it's, speeding up exponentially.
No pun intended.
I was surprised that they were actually born in this episode. I thought it would be much more about just the pregnancy in general, but it was definitely building up towards the delivery, which we got, 2/3 towards the end.
And like kind of the surprise with the second one, I think for more casual viewers, like that was a surprise. Like that was a really nice surprise. We talk about one of our good friends is a less invested and kind of nerdy about the world and all the clues and the history and the comic books and that kind of stuff. So it's very interesting, and I love talking to him about it because his view is a complete, I think in ways it is a more kind of fresh, clean view with it. They're really experiencing the story kind of without all these, pre-knowledge or like they're not looking for the context clues. And if you're not meaning to do it, I think you still inevitably do it if you're kind of a huge fan, if you're really into this. And to have these kind of like, he had I wouldn't say a lukewarm, but some of the criticism I've seen of the show, which I personally don't agree with, but is that it's like the confusion of it and the like purposeful corniness. People don't know what to take. They don't really know how to handle it. They don't really know what to take. And I think this episode particularly, our friend, he mentioned, he was like, oh, okay, okay, this is making a little more sense now. I see why they did the shows the way they did, and then what's happening and what we're seeing. So this really was like you mentioned, a lot of stuff happened here. It was a lot of movement in a really short amount of time.
Yeah, no pun intended, but the speed in which it happens is very fast paced. And it's really interesting getting his perspective, because I feel like when you and I watch it, or avid Marvel fans or comic book nerds, we watch it almost looking for confirmation, like, okay, there's the twins, there's Billy and Tommy, and then someone who's unaware of sort of the comic book history of these characters to watch it, and it's like, oh my God, she had twins. Like what does
Huge
that even
surprise,
mean? Like,
right.
where's this gonna go?
And then like literally 30 minutes. Like I love that they kind of play off of that. It is again that we talk about the structure of the show being this kind of older Brady Bunch, like, here's a wacky thing that happens today, how are we gonna get out of it, you know what I mean? And then like the doctor coming in, who is very crucial in my opinion, another like major context clue of what's happening there as well. There's all these things happening just quickly, and the whirlwind happening around them too.
And Vision being the new dad who's panicky and is clueless and doesn't know what to do.
Slipping on banana peels as he's like trying to run around, and he's like, my kid's gonna be born. I've got to do all this other stuff. So yeah, but I just cannot get over Paul Bettany in this role. Everybody's amazing, and they've all stepped up. But they talk, one of the things in the first episode, Vision talks about how he doesn't have exaggeration. He's like, I literally can't exaggerate things. But now they're giving him such a personality, and he is like growing in a way too, like he is learning as well. So I'm like kind of crushed, because I'm like, is this not going to be real? Is he not going to be real? Is all this growth going to be gone? And that's that would make me go crazy too. So I can't really fault Wanda when she's going to blow up the world later. when she's gonna, you said it when we were talking the other day, when she's gonna Dark Willow everybody.
Oh, something's coming.
Yeah,
like
the dread.
This is not gonna.
About the dread in our first episode.
Yeah.
My gosh. Can you? Why don't I know we talked about this the other day? Let's talk about like the Doctor for a second. Can we talk about in the beginning the stuff with when the doctor, when he leaves, okay, and where's he going? Bermuda, which is a very, I've always connected to like really mysterious things happening. And then when he leaves, could you talk about a little bit about what happens after that scene with Herb?
Well, I want to jump to something because it kind of relates to this, but in the very last scene of the show where Monica / Geraldine gets, hurled out of the reality by Wanda, we actually find out that Westview is a
Yes.
real town. So I'm really curious how that ties into the show. There's houses. You kind of even see like lights in the houses in the background.
I love the like fake painting backgrounds, by the way. Oh my gosh, they were amazing.
So
Like just terrible. And then when you look at them, they're like purposely terrible. You know what I mean? But they like just work. I almost feel like they're like the Wizard of Oz. You know, those like those painted backgrounds they have. Oh, that part was great.
Well, it's funny you mentioned Wizard of Oz because I think there definitely is that element of, the wizard behind the curtain.
Dorothy going through this like the color change, like the
Visions, the Tin Man.
Yeah, absolutely. There are a lot of parallels to that too as well. You mentioned, we talked in the first episode about we had maybe thought that the men were involved with the coven, this is kind of our idea, which is like the Deborah Jo Rupp character and the Emma Caulfield character and the woman from the commercials, which we need to talk about the commercials because you had an amazing theory about those two characters, which I think is really, really possible. So it's like, we thought they may be working with them, but like you said, now that we see that Westview is a place, what if they are helping to manipulate Wanda to literally change this area that's a place on the map to this place, so the people that were there are trapped there. And I think that also goes back to when the doctor talks about it later on, which, okay, what happens to the Bermuda trip? As soon as the kids are born, it gets canceled. So like, do you know what I mean? Like the kids are born now. So what is happening from whatever is happening to Wanda or whoever is doing it to her, and then he says small towns are hard to escape. Like, but he says it in a way, my boyfriend, he is also a more casual fan. And he said this, he was like, I feel like the characters are trying to tell Wanda and Vision something, specifically Herb. He was trying to tell Vision, like he was trying to pull back the curtain for him. Literally, he was trying to break down the wall with the hedge cutter, but then Catherine Hahn shushes him. You know what I mean? And in the show, we can see it as like just a playful, like, hush, Herb. But then in the reality, it could be her like magically controlling him. Do you know what I mean?
Yes, I think that was one of the key scenes in this episode where you see Herb and Agnes talking on the wall. It's very eerie. We're seeing like a very different side to the background characters. I think the first two episodes, I was kind of getting this feeling that Agnes, Catherine Hahn's character, was somewhat self-aware of this reality, that she was just like acting. And then in this episode, you almost see that when the camera looks directly in her face and she like shakes her head no to Herb as he's about to reveal something, she has this look of like fear on her face.
Yes.
And yes, and that just felt so interesting because I thought I knew who her character was, what her role is going to be. And then that just like completely made me rethink everything. And finding out that Westview's an actual town, you're like, okay, is the Agnes thing a red herring? Like, did the people in the WandaVision show, do they exist in the actual Westview and they got sucked into the reality?
Is it like a Truman Show situation? Do you know what I mean? Is it like, they do know that it's happening, but they have to keep it up because maybe they're afraid Wanda will crack if they don't keep it up. Do you know what I mean? Like, but when they get sucked into the reality, like, we need to talk about this point for a second because we talked about this the other day as well. When Tiana Paris's character gets thrown from the orb of which we see at the end, is like there's clearly like a kind of like under the dome kind of situation happening where it's like an area that is they've got the lights on it where the barrier starts, so it's clearly this area where the WandaVision is happening. So when she gets thrown from it, she has the 70s clothing on that she's wearing in the show. She didn't go into the portal with that clothing on. And to me, that seems so, I think just no, you're not, that's not a plot point. Nobody mentions it's not anything. It's just, she gets thrown from it. And then they focus on her. Like, you know, I think it's just the sword people. I don't think she's like under arrest or anything. The sword people are like coming to make sure she's not like dangerous, but she is working with them.
Yeah,
she is
just taking
working
precautions.
with them. She is working with them, and she's an agent there, and she's going to be reporting back what happened, if she even remembers what happens. But the fact that the clothes are the same, it proves that inside, whatever Wanda changes can become reality outside of the orb.
Exactly. Yeah, I mean, that was such an intentional set. It was meant to be like a, you know, WTF moment, like, oh my God, what's happening? But it's also, like you said, it sets up a very specific rule. Like, okay, whatever she makes in there can escape in the reality. And now that the babies are being born, you know, calling back to the second episode, for the children, you know, now children are finally introduced into this world. It's the first time we've seen kids of any kind. And, you know, it took 3 episodes to get to that. So I think that's the story is starting to come together where, you know, she's in this pocket reality that exists in, you know, the larger reality. There's a real town. She's making babies. Things that happen in there go outside, and there's still minor details. Like, I'm not sure how it works with the people within, like Agnes, but something's coming together. And I do believe that, you know, Mephisto in some way is behind this.
Or there
I
is
think
their ultimate goal. You know what I mean? Like, he's either manipulating them to do something for him, or he, you know, all these other clues are coming in, Curtis. Like, she's going to be in Doctor Strange 2. Just the other day, she said in this interview that I read, she said it. She was like, you never know. I may appear in Spider-Man 3. I haven't gotten the call yet, but who knows? She's going to be in that movie in some capacity. She's totally going to be in that movie in some capacity too. And this whole idea of what, yeah, absolutely. Gosh, just.
I could see her and Doctor Strange having some kind of appearance in multiple.
I agree.
Paul
Bettany also said just the other day, I have an interview where he says that there is a surprise actor that he had been waiting to work with for a long time, and he said that they have sparks together. That it's amazing. So Paul Bettany also said that the show does end with a like Avengers-like battle. So if think about this, we talked about this the other day. So if the show is progressing through the time periods, it's going through like 50s, 60s, 70s, 80s, 90s. They've already confirmed, they've already said that there is an Office like, 2000s like mockumentary steady camp episode as well too. What if like, again, like in this reality show, it leads up to like a movie quote version of in this world of like the Avengers versus whoever that is the ultimate villain. Do you know what I'm saying? So the TV version that they see is like, I mean, I said it the last one, Monica Rambeau. I think that's, you could be Captain Marvel. Cha-ching! And then she's in her comic costume, and then she is Captain Marvel and has the same powers. Do you know what I mean? It's like such a brilliant like way that she can, that's just a crazy idea. I just think it is going to go there because he has said it is going to end with a crazy battle. So who are all the players that are going to be involved in that? You know what I mean? Like, who's going to be involved in all of that craziness happening?
Yeah, I mean, that's a good question. I have no idea. I mean, off the top of my head, I would say Wanda, Vision, Speed, Wiccan, Monica Rambeau as Photon, maybe in the last episode, and taking on, either Mephisto directly, or if the witches coven theory is correct.
Well, Deborah Jo Rupp is coming back. I forgot her name the last episode. Deborah Jo Rupp. She is the like the mother from that '70s show. She was the Mrs. Hart in the first episode. She's already confirmed to come back. They actually purposely kept her out of the '70s episode to not like distract her or anything, but she is coming back. So they're every single thing in this show to me is a clue, and everything in it has a specific purpose. Everything in it, every shot, every, like we talked about the fireplace, when the fireplace explodes. Oh well, that's I mean, like the hellfire and brimstone. I mean, like that's you had mentioned the other day, which I thought was brilliant.
You're referring to the fireplace going off
Yes,
during
yes.
her pregnancy.
Just little clues like that.
Yeah. Oh, that's definitely a nod to Mephisto. And there's even this very like startling something they did with the audio, like when she's screaming in pregnancy pains, you almost hear like a dual sound or like an echo. Very eerie.
The unpredictability of her powers, to me, is also on display when she gets out of control. When she see what happens when things get out of, like when she has emotionally crazy moments, like when the baby kicks and the water happens. The water literally is the reality that happens. She has a pain, and then her jacket changes immediately, and then it is real. It is real. It is a new thing, and it was not the thing that it was before. She didn't mean to change it to that, but it did anyway. Do you know what I mean? That's like the kind of craziness about it.
Even the I believe there's a scene where they're in the nursery and they're hanging up the little mobile above the crib, and it has little toy butterflies, and she says she feels like a flutter, and then suddenly those butterflies spring to life. And I think it's just, it's playing more into that idea of, like you said, her water breaks and it's raining, but with the butterflies, I think it's interesting that she's sort of creating life in a sense. Maybe with the stork
the
as well.
Stork coming to life was great. I love that.
Those
scene.
are
so ridiculous.
So good, so funny. But it's like her manifesting life out of nothing, and maybe those were her baby steps. She created butterflies and then a stork, and then by the end she's creating full-blown
people. Well, just people. She's
belly.
creating people. Could you talk about the children? Could you talk about the children for just a little bit? Obviously, everybody's gonna. Well, not obviously. We talked about that. So, who are the children potentially? And could you talk about Vision and some of the things we saw from him in this episode that we could maybe be context clues for the children as well too? Could you talk about them? Because the first 2 episodes were all about for the children. So they're here, so they're important. So who are they?
Well, we finally got them by name, Billy and Tommy, in this episode, which everyone, we know from the comics is Speed and Wiccan. And I think one of my favorite things about this episode was, Vision, his powers have never really been defined. We've seen him walk through walls, and he's
incredibly strong, but he can be really dense, like when he sinks, like there's just
they can kind of make it up whenever they want. But I felt in this episode it was very heavy on him using his super speed, even the way they visualized it. So I think when I heard about this show, they would use maybe Quicksilver as Wanda's inspiration for passing on those abilities to her son. But I think it was maybe something beautiful about Vision using his super speed
totally 100%
in this episode, because it kind of feels it's much more like, he inherited that from his father, not his uncle. So much more building that idea of
the visualization of Vision's speed was different than what Pietro's looks like. Back in Age of Ultron, which of course Disney Plus had to just show, like, you would also like Age of Ultron. I don't know if you got that ad after. That was the ad I got after. It was like, which we're going to get back to Ultron in just a second, but it was like, we talked about Ultron this episode, and then Disney's like, hey, remember this movie? Go watch it. Wanda's also in this one too. So thank you, Disney Plus, for that. We appreciate thank you for jamming down the product placement. But I think this episode really did recontextualize Age of Ultron in a lot of ways. I think that's like the forgotten Avengers movie. we talked about it a lot, and there's a lot of good moments in Avengers Age of Ultron, but I think overall it is kind of a hot mess. I think like that was Marvel going through a lot of growing pains. It was before Feige had full control. There was just, I think you could tell in that movie there's like 30 minutes cut out of it. There's just, it literally like destroyed Joss Whedon, which he's kind of a douche anyway, so I'm not really necessarily bad about that, but like the movie itself was not ultimately what I feel like, definitely wasn't the cohesiveness that the first one was. But jumping back, we just got off on a tangent about Age of Ultron. What do you think? You made a really good point about the twins' birth. Could you talk about that for a second? I mean, one of them is Speed, so.
Oh yeah, of course,
Mhm.
Speed is born
Mhm.
first. I mean, very natural. It was a very beautiful moment too, where Wanda's like, don't you want to greet your son as yourself? So I do love this show. Still finds moments to, like really, pull at your heartstrings.
Sincerity.
It's still
It's
emotional.
sincerity. It's just true
yeah.
sincerity. Like, I mean, for me, I watch it for those moments. Like, that's the real moment. It's like the powers and all the craziness is like what's happening, but the interesting thing about the people are those moments.
Yeah, and I mean they're doing an amazing job of just turning Vision into a human. I think everyone was. They had speaking of Age of Ultron, there's the moment where Vision saves Wanda, and they sort of like share that moment where they
it's like their first
at each other
connection
while
in
they
the
say,
entire
and you're like,
series.
how? Yeah, and you think like, how is this going to work in the movies? Like, in a robot and a woman like going to get it on? Like, how will that work? But this show really does show like, oh, Vision's a human being. Like, he's maybe he's super smart, but like he's still like panicky when it comes to like making decisions, and just doing a great job. But yeah, I mean the kids being born is it has to be setting up some kind of possession story,
child of the demon, or I agree. Or it's going to be something like, we talked about Mephisto with the bargains. Him, but Wanda is going to have to be put into some situation, or like this world is going to be taken from her because it's going to not be real, and she's going to crack that way, or it's going to be like, you can have this, but you had mentioned as well that you talked about before what happens. What happens? How do we get into this? Can you talk a little bit about how you think we get into this world? Like, we just start into it, but obviously something had to happen to get Wanda into this world. What do you think that is?
I really don't know, because I think they could go a couple of ways about it, but there's been anytime we get those sort of reset moments where with Wanda, we saw with the beekeeper in the previous episode where she just says no, and then it like rewinds real quick, and then she has that moment with Geraldine.
Oh god, that one blew my mind. My mind
and
was
you
blown.
get
I thought my TV skipped.
That skip was so
I thought
good.
like my internet broke for a second, and then I was like, no, she just rewrote it again. Just that's what it looked like.
And the scene in the second episode where she just says no to the beekeeper, she seems just so like confident in that moment, and it makes me wonder if she is aware that this is fake, and she'll do anything to, like keep it going, not break the reality. And anytime something threatens that, that's when she
that makes sense to me. And
it.
she's surrounded by all of her traumas. Do you know what I mean? Like, her traumas are all over everything. And we have to talk about Pietro and Ultron, because that was a crucial moment with this scene.
I do think that Vision holds some kind of key with him being the Mind Stone. I think, and we even saw in the trailers, there's a scene, I believe it's in the Halloween episode, where Catherine he kind of like touches Catherine Hahn and wakes her up. And I think the Mind Stone will play a key, because I was rewatching Endgame the other day, and when Thanos talks about they ask him what'd you do with the stones, and he said, I destroyed them, but then he says reduced to atoms. And I think that's a very key information, or key line, because when he says that, atoms, when you're making something, it's just a very particular arrangement of atoms. So I think that will be the key to her. I do think the Mind Stone is in Vision's head. Like, she recreated it.
We talked about this too.
And we
talked about that.
She doesn't anticipate.
Wanda is the only character who is created by one Infinity Stone, and she destroyed another. So they said that is brilliant. I had never even thought about the thing with Thanos with the atoms, and then that also connects to, oh my god, I'm having like revelations galore. That connects to Doctor Strange with the magic, it being like, the Ancient One explaining that it's not just out of nowhere, it's taking one thing and putting it in another place. You know what I mean? It's just controlling that energy, which totally tracks all that. Oh, that's like blowing my mind.
And isn't there a law of physics or something in science that says
right something you just said something in science.
It's all about like energy transfers.
Clearly, we're showing that we are not biologists.
Yeah.
That is true, but matter can neither be created nor destroyed. But with this, if they mention in Infinity War what Vision tells him or tells her, he's like, you can do it. He's like, you have the power. I think she can also put them back together, like you just said. Like with her power, she could remake an Infinity Stone if she wants. You know what I mean? Like, I almost feel like whether or not they choose to make her a mutant or not, you had pointed out, you said to me that too, the X on her dress, which was crazy. I didn't even notice that the first time, which is like, I think they need to finally answer this damn question with this freaking show. Like, is she a freaking mutant or not? Like, do mutants exist? Like, answer the question so we can stop worrying about the question and move on from it, you know? But I definitely think that she is like this like kind of chaos incarnate. Like, that's what her powers are going to be. She's just like empowered by two different Infinity Stones, and it's just madness, or just, well, multiverse madness, but it's you know, it's uncontrollable when she gets you know what I mean? She isn't in control when she starts to lose everything, when it starts to when it starts to break down, when people start to show that the show isn't real, when Tiana Paris breaks and mentions the thing about Ultron. When those things happen, it was terrifying to me. Terrifying when she turned on her after that. It was like, oh God. Oh God, this is the real Scarlet Witch. Like, this is the real Scarlet Witch.
Oh, I mean, what do you do? What do you do when you threaten someone who
could write you out of existence if they
your
wanted to?
molecular
Just flick their wrist
structure?
and you're literally gone, and
Right.
nobody will ever remember you. Terrifying. And Elizabeth Olsen really, really nailed that moment too. I literally was like, oh my God, she's scary. that was the Dark Willow moment, or like the seed of the Dark Willow moment.
Yes, and I think oh gosh, I can never remember her
Tiana
name,
Paris.
the Monica Rambeau actress. Yes, she did such an amazing job, because in that scene, I feel like she's playing very different roles. You know, she's sucked in this reality. She's playing this, you know, 70s girl. She's talking about,
she's like, girl, I
Foxy,
got
and
a
it feels
promotion.
very
You know,
natural.
like, it's
but
very
then
like
as soon
fun
as she
and breezy, and like she's like her best friend. Yes.
Yeah, and then as soon as she sort of becomes aware, she tries to like just manually slip back into that character to keep it going, and it's such a good scene. But I agree, just terrifying with Wanda. And then what's her phrase? She had to rush home, or she had to leave. It's just very menacing. I think you know, we talked about the scene with Herb and the hedge clippers, and he's like taking down the wall. It feels very much breaking down barriers. And as the show progresses, it's going to be more and more of that collapse, like Wanda struggling to hold on to the reality,
no matter how much. Well, I mean, look,
so
Vision is the one who starts to break. In the moment when he sits down with her, he's like, Wanda, he starts to break, and then she, you know what I mean? That's when she, and then it just rewrites. So even in that moment, she changes him too. She changes him in that moment. So yeah, oh my God. I think the question now is like, I mean, Jimmy Woo asked it on the radio, who's doing this to you? Like, there's a mix of someone manipulating her and her being involved in it and being aware of it. You know, I think she's trying to just make her own. I think she's trying to make her own happiness, even if it's fake. You know what I mean? Like, all of her traumas are surrounding her, and I think she's literally creating a reality of herself that for herself that is what she wishes it could be. You know what I mean? She just has this kind of like silly, quirky, fun life with her husband that she loves, who's a great person, and they have kids, and you know, they go to their jobs, and you know, just a really kind of stereotypically kind of like American apple pie kind of fantasy, frankly, which that's why it doesn't make any sense.
Well, I mean, given everything she's, you know, been through, she was experimented on, and then Age of Ultron almost ended the world, and she joins the Avengers, and you know, blows up a building, and then she snapped away out of existence for 5 years, and comes back, and her brother dies. It's like, my God, like, give her a break. Like, I don't think anyone can fault her for this. But going back to like Vision's Mind Stone, like, I think he'll be absolutely essential to sort of bringing the awareness in this world.
He's the Xander.
He had
He's
a line.
Be the Xander. He
in
and the
Civil
kids
War.
will be the Xander. Maybe she has to Sophie's choice pick one of the two of them or something. But like, you know, I'll always love you. It doesn't matter if you can destroy the world. I love you, and that's all we'll ever have. You know what I mean? Like, that they're the anchor that will pull her back, or
Mhm.
that will make her not destroy everything. Do you know what I mean? Like,
Well, Vision had a line in Civil War where, he's having a heart-to-heart with Wanda while she's being held at the Avengers base. And he says, I don't know what this thing is, this Mind Stone. And he's like, I hope to understand it. The more I understand it, the less it controls me. Maybe one day I can learn to control it. And I think that will come into play in this reality. Maybe the longer he's alive, or the more he becomes aware. The Mind Stone in the MCUs was used as like a mind control device. So I think it sort of maybe grants
awareness.
him this
Yes, yeah.
awareness that
Right.
he keeps coming to, and Wanda keeps wiping. But it'll come into play, and maybe he learns to, maybe he touches her.
He
or
uses
Agnes,
the Mind
and,
Stone to wake them
that's
up
when
from
they
what's
like,
happening.
yes. And maybe towards the end, Wanda is like so adamant about keeping this reality, and Vision's like, no, this isn't real. We can't stay here. And he goes around, and maybe he works with Agnes or Herb, or the town folks, and he's like, I need your help. Like,
I could see
maybe
that one.
she's the
Yeah,
big
maybe,
bad.
but it's like maybe it's
yeah,
connected
it's
to
everyone.
both things. Like, she's becoming that, and it's like the Mephisto part of her. You know what I mean? It's like that's like we talked about the Scarlet Witch being like the supreme. Could you talk a little bit about the women and the Sokovia thing we had talked about in the connection? Like maybe they're the Hydra. You had mentioned a really, really great theory about the people in the commercials. It's the same people always, and the commercials always relate back to.
Yes.
Like this one especially, like, find the goddess within. Like, come on, like literally, come on. Like, it's so on the nose. The Strucker thing is a trauma. If it's connected to Hydra, obviously the first one as well, with the bomb, which is connected to her parents. Could you talk a little about how we think there's a through line there?
I had read this. I wish I could take credit for this, but I read this theory online that the two people in those ads are Wanda and Pietro's parents, and which I think would be an amazing Easter egg, or maybe it comes into play later. But even the commercial in this episode was about the Hydra soak, like a bathtub. I think the tagline was, when you want to get away, but you don't want to go anywhere. And then it ends with, find the goddess within. To me, that ad does two things, talking about Wanda, finding the goddess within, finding her power, or, we had talked about this, where is the Scarlet Witch sort of this title, this alpha witch, the supreme, and, maybe that's her name in the comics, but does that become this title that is granted upon her by the witches or whatever, like, oh, she is the Scarlet Witch. But going back to the ad, that that with them being her parents, the woman in the commercial is soaking in the bathtub, being a vacation, and for me, that was Wanda sort of creating this paradise escape for her parents in that world, sort of like granting them the escape that they always wanted. I'm really curious to see what they do with Aaron Taylor Johnson. He has to be brought back in
I'm
some
hoping.
way. Like, they're not done with him. They're not done with Ultron. It's coming back. I'm not sure like what I would do, like how or where he would fit in. My guess is the Halloween episode will be just insane. You'll see so many background characters. Possibly he shows up for that. Maybe they do an episode where there's like a dinner party and he's the fun uncle that shows up, and it's Aaron Taylor Johnson, but he looks nothing like he did in Age of Ultron. Maybe he's
handsome and just he's like a movie character, or he's like I could see him being like a 90s, like, My So-Called Life, like he's that like Jared Leto-ish like heartthrob. You know what I mean? Like he's like the cool uncle, or like he's like Uncle Jesse from Full House or something, like the cool uncle.
Okay, that I love that idea. Uncle.
I agree with you. All of this is really, I mean, they cannot mention him that way, and him not be even just like even if it's like a Harry Potter's parents with the resurrection stone, like when they come out of the Priori Incantatum, when they come out of the thing and they're like, sweetheart, we can only hold it for so long, please go now. It's like it's a moment of like the person who she believes and trusts the most and knows loves her is like, Wanda, please stop. You know what I mean? I can see them using him in a I don't think he's going to come back in full, because that was kind of like, that was always the big contingency you always read about his clause, that he purposely took Avengers Age of Ultron because they were going to kill him at the end. So I could see him coming back. And they held Mark Hamill for a year. Nobody knew that Mark Hamill was going to reappear in Mandalorian. So even if it is a small part, and we haven't talked about Evan Peters. Evan Peters is already confirmed for the show. Is that going to be like a multiverse situation? Is he going to be Speed? Is he going to be Speed grown up in this reality? Do you know what I mean? Like at the end of the show, what could happen there?
I think it'll be interesting if they do introduce. I mean, they just introduced Speed, but if the twins stick around, which I assume they will, how does Quicksilver factor in? Because I feel like Marvel, they don't want to do too many of like characters or heroes with the same ability, or it's like, oh, okay, now we have two speedsters. So
yeah, but they are doing a lot of these like legacy people now. I mean, you got Kate Bishop coming, you got Miss Marvel's coming. They're setting up the Young Avengers in a lot of different ways. They already cast Isaiah Bradley for the Falcon and Winter Soldier show. So if by the end of this show, Wiccan and Speed are that age, or like their early 20s, like these other characters are going to be, it makes sense. I mean, Evan Peters maybe is a little bit older, maybe he's like kind of like an older brother to them, but that tracks for me. And people loved him as that anyway, so it's a way of him being the new version, but not being the X-Men version. Do you know what I mean? Like you can, the way that they're showing it into the show, they can show you that, and it's like,
what if Mark Hamill has another secret appearance at the end of this show?
Mark Hamill is Mephisto.
Mark Hamill as Mephisto walking in holding Grogu.
Every Disney series is going to have a Mark Hamill cameo at the very end where he's a secret character.
They're all trick-or-treating. You see the Mandalorian walking in the background.
Oh, somebody's going to be in a baby Groot costume, or a baby Grogu costume, probably.
Didn't they do that in E.T.? The trick-or-treat scene, like you see someone dressed as Yoda.
I think so. Yeah, I think
in the
so.
background.
I think so.
And then even in, I think it was like Star Wars Episode 1 or 2. I think they even had the like ET alien species on the giant, Galactic Council Republic. That's really out of nowhere, but do a Google search. It's pretty interesting.
Oh, okay, man.
I love. What was it you said? The theory I just.
The Jesse Full House thing.
Oh my God,
Aaron Taylor Johnson.
Just like leather jacket, like
everywhere you look, everywhere there's a heart. And Aaron Taylor Johnson's like, he gives that like hand through the hair, and he looks over like, you quirky kids.
It's like he has some kind of have mercy type.
Yeah, or it's like, I don't want to wait for our lives to be over. And he's like really dramatic. It's very like Dawson's Creeky. Like, oh my God. I agree with you that I think the Halloween episode is going to be really just jam packed with amazingness, and that's one. I think it could be even maybe next week, because that one seems like it's like in the 80s, and that seems like where they're going to be next, maybe.
Yeah, I think the progression is next week's the 80s, and I'm not quite sure what inspiration they're pulling from. That's definitely, I think you see from the trailers we've seen the twins. They're still like in some kind of crib. And maybe it'll be like a Michelle Tanner Full House kind of thing.
Oh wait, what if the kids get like a cool line like, "You got it, dude," but it's like, like,
my God.
You always had a cool idea too with the Halloween episode that the kids would be dressed up like Quicksilver, and like they would be dressed up like them as like costumes, just like Wanda and Vision are that we see in the trailer. Like that is, I do agree with you that there's going to be like Marvel Easter egg galore there. I feel like just everybody's going to be something. I
think they're setting the show up to be a reboot or sequel to Full House.
Fuller House. Candace Cameron Burr is going to come in.
Elizabeth Olsen raising twins in
Oh,
the
what if
80s. Come on.
what if the main villains are the Olsen twins? What if Mary Kate and Ashley are the true villains, and it's like the Olsen extravaganza?
The Olsen twins show up as Wiccan and Steve.
We're just clearly children of the 90s. Oh.
So, last question for you.
Okay.
'Cause I think we have a lot of good talking points. What do you see next? Like, so we're now 3 episodes in. We're starting to see some, patterns, and what's next? Or what now? I should say.
Hey, this is our what now question. Hey, maybe this is a good thing we should ask at the end of every episode. That's a good. Do we just become best friends? Did we just find an ending tagline for the show? Oh my gosh!
You have to call me Nighthawk.
What now? What's going to happen now? I am going to shift over, and I don't know what's going to happen in terms of the show, because I don't know what episode is next, but we haven't gotten the idea of what is it, the Halloween episode? Is it the 80s episode? Are they both the same thing? What's going to happen there? So I'm going to shift over, and my point is going to be, I think we're going to shift out to the outer world a little bit more. Now that I think Monica is back on the outside, I think we're going to find a little bit more out about what Sword's doing. I think we're going to find out a little bit more about what they think is happening on the inside. I think we're going to see if she remembers anything after she comes back out. I think that's going to happen. And I also think we're going to see how she got in the first place.
I can see that.
What about you? What now, Curt?
I think in terms of the WandaVision story, the next episode will be set in the 80s. I think it'll start to be newly parents, like domestic bliss, like maybe the twins are like starting like just early stages of like running around the house, and they're trying to like keep it together. And I think it'll still be like heavy on the comedy for sure. But I totally agree, like they're starting to hint at the larger, what's happening to the larger world outside. Who is Sword? Jimmy Woo, the Kat Dennings character from Thor, is in the show. So they've got to like slowly start to introduce that. And I think as we get closer to the end, it'll start to be much more 50-50 in terms of,
outside
seeing
world,
it from
world,
Sword's viewpoint and the real world, and starting to see it break down. So the next couple episodes, they'll continue this rapid age progression of the twins. This episode, or the next one, I would assume, maybe they're in the toddler phase, just running around the house, speed, breaking shit. I think there will be a really cool scene. The first time we even see Wanda in the MCU is in Civil War, where she's making the blocks float. And actually, in this episode, we see in the nursery they're kind of like giant blocks, but they're the ones with like they have A, B, C, D on them. And I
Billy's going to do the same when he's a kid. Billy's going to do the same. Oh my god,
he's going to walk in and he's going to be making the blocks flow and
speeds. He's running around everywhere. Yes. Oh my god, brilliance.
It's going to be like The Incredibles meets Full House.
Amazing. Why don't they hire us?
I'm so excited. So many. We keep getting answers, but more questions at the same time, and I personally can't wait.
Cannot wait, man.
It'll be amazing.
Did we just do a second episode? Oh my gosh!
I think we did. We finally got a pattern going.
Okay, fingers crossed that the audio works, and that we're not vision like being rewritten over reality as we're talking over each other, but we weren't talking over each other.
Yeah, any audio hiccups you hear in this episode is just, the simulation.
Yeah, Wanda realizes that we're on to what she's doing, and she's writing us. She's knowing us, if you will.
Well, assuming anyone who's left and stuck around listening to this whole thing, thank you so much for tuning back in. I'm still having a blast doing these.
Me too, man.
Always a pleasure talking to my eBud Peyton. And stick around. Hopefully we'll have episode 3 for you next week.
See you all next week.
Later.
Bye.
Hey guys, thanks for listening to Marvel What Now podcast. This is Curt. For more theories and custom artwork, you can follow on social media at Marvel What Now.
And I am Peyton, and for more pictures of me shirtless and just general buffoonery, you can find me on Instagram at P4Peyton, Peyton. Be sure to like and subscribe at the bottom, and we will see you when we see you, because we owe you nothing.